Tonight, a St. Paul couple is sharing the story of what happened to their son when he began smoking high-potency cannabis.
It's not a story about what will happen to everyone, but it is a story of what can happen to some people, especially adolescents who may be struggling with their mental health.
A warning, this story does deal with suicide and might be difficult for some to watch. Here's Tom Lydon of the Fox 9 investigators.
He was never an easy kid, but the same side of that is he had a big heart.
Randy and Heather Bacchus may have known their son better than he knew himself. As fun and fun-loving as Randy Jr. could be, they tried to teach him there were consequences to everything, including the marijuana he began smoking at 15.
And I really think he did it for social acceptance and kind of to fit in. You know, a lot of kids want to fit in. They want to get along with their peers and think that that's, you know, one way to do it.
Today is the first day of high school, a new journey where it really, really counts, right, Randy?
Caught several times smoking pot in high school, he went to treatment and was diagnosed with anxiety and depression on top of his ADHD. Randy told his parents the marijuana helped. They were skeptical, of course, but when he moved to Colorado after high school, they thought the change of scenery helped. At first.
Out here in the wild, wild west.
Randy started a streetwear fashion company and held down a real estate job. He had a medical marijuana card, but it hardly mattered in Colorado, where recreational cannabis was legalized a decade ago.
And when he was in Colorado, we thought, he's doing better. He seemed better. He kind of had two personalities. There was really two sides of his story. One was the side we saw, the other was the side that he was living.
Just you and, oh. All right, that's it. How to
They saw the other side, finally, going through their son's laptop and iPhone. Randy was documenting his life, convinced he was on the verge of becoming a rap star.
I just randomly decided that I was going to make music. Yeah, it'll be interesting to look back at this.
Marijuana holla, bake like some iguanas.
But instead of a look behind the music, it shows his rapid descent down a cannabis rabbit hole. Vaping, dabbing, blunts, edibles, you name it. All of it with sky-high concentrations of THC. His parents say he became paranoid, grandiose, irritable, all signs of what's known as cannabis-induced psychosis.
He thought that the FBI was tracking him, that the mob was after him, that the mob was coming after us. That's pretty typical from my understanding of people who go through cannabis-induced psychosis. They oftentimes believe that their phones and their computers are being watched and tracked.
I think I'm going to take a break from smoking for a sec because I'm enjoying it a little too much.
Blow away the smoke, and the research on high-potency cannabis and mental health is becoming clearer. A recent survey of 20 studies with more than 100,000 participants looked at high-potency cannabis, defined as more than 20% THC in flower and edibles, and concentrated extracts above 60%. It found regular users of the strong stuff were 3 times more likely to experience a psychotic episode, and daily users of high-potency marijuana 5 times more likely to experience psychosis.
So it is clear that there is a correlation between cannabis use and some types of mental health outcomes. That is clear. The question is, did people go to cannabis to self-medicate because they were already having mental health outcomes? Or did the cannabis cause the mental health outcomes?
Charlie Reznikoff is an addiction doctor with Hennepin Healthcare. He says while cannabis-induced psychosis remains relatively rare, there's little doubt people with pre-existing mental health conditions are at greater risk.
So there, this is another one of those things where we could debate all day about it, but it is clear that cannabis is exacerbating psychosis. It's associated with psychosis, and the cause and effect versus correlation is, it's almost not worth the debate because the correlation is so strong and these folks are so vulnerable.
After testifying at the Capitol, Randy's parents wonder if lawmakers truly understand the risk, despite their pledges to support mental health and greater access to treatment.
Continue to decriminalize, expunge past criminal records, and educate people on the real dangers of today's marijuana, but do not legalize and commercialize this psychoactive drug. Thank you.
And as we've talked to some legislators, we're finding that out, that they didn't realize that It's not the same as it was back in the 70s.
Ken Winter studied addiction for 30 years at the U of M and is a founder of Smart Approaches to Marijuana Minnesota. He wants lawmakers to consider limits on THC concentrations and set the legal age at 25, when the brain has stopped developing. He points to a Denmark study that looked at brain scans of 800 adolescents.
Lo and behold, disruptions in the brain development of the cannabis-using teens, and those disruptions were occurring in parts of the brain that are important for information processing and emotional regulation, which has always been pointed to as harbingers of what can lead to problems with psychosis, depression, anxiety.
Oh, this is my last joint for a little bit.
In his last 9 months, Randy struggled to stay sober.
About to be a little naughty, so yeah. Do it your way. I would like to get sober for myself for the first time.
His father took him to a Florida treatment center where he lasted an hour before going back to Colorado and back to cannabis.
I figured he'd use again. We're going to be one and done with this, and he's going to have to figure his shit out because it's too hard on his mother. It's too hard on me.
Randy even checked himself into a Denver detox and was released the next day because there weren't enough beds. But there were also brief moments of clarity when he was back to the son they knew.
Have been struggling to stay sober. I haven't been on anything hard. I've been trying to quit smoking weed. It's really hard because growing up, I was always such a pro-weed guy, and I think cannabis does wonders for some people, and maybe at some point in my life, it will be present again.
In July of 2021, his parents received a hopeful text from Randy. "I am done with the music," he wrote. "I'm quitting weed for good. I have been running from my past mistakes, and I think it's time I own up and start living a good life." 43 minutes later, at 2 a.m., he sent a final text. "I love you, and I'm sorry for everything. I wish I would have been a better person." He then Googled Jesus 3 times and took his own life at 21. He never saw his parents reply the next morning. Life isn't easy. Things happen. We all make choices. Today is a fresh start. We love you too.
In the end, I know that he really tried. I mean, all these things that we didn't know. And part of me feels like a failure, but we did what we thought we could do, and we did the best we could. It still doesn't make it easy. Randy's monument is done.
In the end, they feel like Randy didn't understand, at least for him, the consequences of cannabis, and neither did they. Now all those videos that he thought would document his rise to stardom show something else. A young man slipping away from himself and those he loved, lost in a haze of cannabis and paranoia.
Shout out to anyone who makes this documentary happen that I'm filming for, that pray to God I'll be alive for, you know?
Randy's parents have created their own video documenting their son's addiction to cannabis, and we do have a link at the Fox 9 app.
You may be wondering, of the 21 states that have legalized recreational cannabis, only 2 states, Vermont and Connecticut, have limits on potency, but that cap is very high at 30%.
If you or a loved one is at risk of suicide or self-harm, you can call or text 988 24/7. It will connect you to the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline.
A ban